Do you condemn what the IRA did?
I condemn all bombing. It's not a good idea. It's terrible what happened.
It's not the question. The question is, do you condemn what the IRA did?
Look, I condemn what was done by the British Army as well as by other sides as well.
Are you refusing to condemn what the IRA did? Jeremy?
I think we're going to have to do this later, you know.
Okay, well, let me just this last question while it's quiet there. Are you refusing to condemn what the IRA?
So can you condemn unequivocally the IRA?
Look, bombing is wrong. Of course, all bombing is wrong, and of course I condemn it.
But you condemning all bombing, then? Can you condemn the IRA without equating it to...
No, I think what you have to say is all bombing has to be condemned, and you have to bring about a peace process. Listen...
So do you condemn the IRA?
Wait a minute, let me finish, please. In the 1980s, Britain was looking for a military solution in Ireland. It clearly was never going to work. Ask anyone in the British Army at that time. And therefore, you have to seek a peace process. You condemn the violence of those that laid bombs, that killed large numbers of innocent people, and I do.
So can you condemn the IRA?
I've just condemned all those that did bombing, all those.
If you let me finish as well,
after
I've just let you finish, that would be appreciated.
All those on both sides that laid bombs.
But can you condemn the IRA without equating the IRA, who were responsible for 60% of the deaths during the Troubles, with the British security services, who were responsible for around 10%?
And there were loyalist bombs as well, which you haven't mentioned.
Yeah, 30%.
There were loyalist bombs as well. I condemn all the bombing by both the loyalists and the IRA.
Can you just say... But you won't just talk about...
Wait a minute. I don't know quite what point you're trying to make here.
Now, Diane, let's look at what you've been doing by deserting poor Michael on the sofa here to run as Labour leader. We discover you now claimed £1,100 on taxis, including an individual claim for £192. Is that acceptable for an inner London MP?
The 190 figure is, I think, a dozen taxi bills.
You put in one. You didn't designate each individual one.
Well, no. When they will publish online the scanned receipts, and you'll see it's just a series of receipts for £15.
Did you just put in one bid for 192?
No. I add it up.
Do you think the taxpayer should be paying over £1,000 for you to run around London in taxis?
I don't run around London. What I do is a couple of times a night I take a cab home to Hackney, which costs about £20. Yeah, a couple of...
Why do we have to pay for that? Why don't you just dip into your own pocket?
Because...
You're well paid.
Because I don't do it until it's late at night. And in fact, I don't do it anymore at all now because thanks to Ken Livingstone, we've opened a new East London line, and there's a tube station at the end of my road. Before, the nearest tube station was Liverpool Street. Jeremy's the one with the mandate. We will have a discussion. We will have an agreed position.
You have a mandate, don't you?
I didn't...
Well, you're an elected MP. You have a mandate.
Yes, but I didn't contest the leadership election.
Yes, but don't you feel that all the members of the shadow cabinet actually represent Labour voters who have given them a mandate just as much as the Labour members who voted for Jeremy Corbyn have given him one?
Any MP represents that constituency. When it comes to the framework, when it comes to the framework of the Labour Party, only Jeremy represents the party as a whole. And you have to respect the fact that he had the biggest vote of any leader since the war.
Yeah, but I don't recall either you or Jeremy Corbyn respecting previous leaders. You rebelled, you took different positions.
Yes, but the point here is that Jeremy's position is the one the members have, and I think members will be even more strongly against bombing.
Well, the members have tended to select the leader in the past. You haven't respected them in the past.
In 2 weeks, voters will go to the polls in the general election to decide who will represent them in Parliament and who will lead the country. So which of the party leaders has the best plan for the future of the United Kingdom? Tonight I'm talking to the leader of the Labour Party and the man who hopes to be Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn. Was Manchester a consequence of our foreign policy?
Manchester was a consequence of one person going into a music event and killing a very large number of people. There can be no defence whatsoever of that.
So
and I do not in any way change that view. That is just a vile, horrible event, and those people have got to be brought to book. One, obviously the one who did it is dead, but there appears to be a whole connection of them.
Struggling to find the role of foreign policy. You see, Islamic State was founded well before the invasion of Iraq. It's murdering people across Europe because it hates our values. Only last year they said this: some might argue that your foreign policies are what drives our hatred. But this particular reason for hating you is secondary.
Even if you were to stop bombing us, we would continue to hate you. Our primary reason for hating you will not cease to exist until you embrace Islam. It's not foreign policy.
It's a totally perverted form of Islam. It's not.
But they're targeting young girls at a pop concert because they hate our values. They said they hate secular liberal societies. It's not foreign policy.
I agree they hate those liberal values. They hate the idea of women being able to enjoy themselves and all the liberal values. And that was the whole point of my speech this morning. We've got to defend our liberal values.
But where's the foreign policy? I mean, what was the foreign policy of Sweden that resulted in Sweden being attacked?
The foreign policy issue has to be for all of us. What is happening in a number of countries where we have intervened and where there is a lack of any coherent form of...
But we'd be attacked anyway.
Well, Andrew, shouldn't we look at where the sources are coming from of those attacks? But surely any sensible person would want to do that.
But you're the one that raised foreign policy today. What was the foreign policy?
I think
the Yazidi women,
Andrew, I think
enslaved and sexually assaulted, killed. The Yazidi women. What was their foreign policy?
Andrew, I am not defending any attacks on women or anybody else. What I'm saying is...
I'm not accusing you.
Thank you. What I'm saying is that it would be unwise of any government or anywhere in the world to ignore the issue of instability across the piece, which gives a space for that kind of perversion of Islam to take hold. Barack Obama has said as much. Many others have said as much.
You've called for, your phrase was smarter ways today to deal with countries harbouring terrorists. But you wouldn't put boots on the ground. You wouldn't bomb the terrorists. You wouldn't use drones to take out the terrorist leaders. So what would you do? Would you talk to them?
ISIS, no, I wouldn't. ISIS doesn't come from nowhere. ISIS doesn't get its money from nowhere. ISIS doesn't get its arms from nowhere. ISIS does have a whole lot of connections around the world, financial and others, which I think need to be robustly chased and followed.
Well, we live in an age of terrorism now, that's clear. And one of the most important responsibilities of being Prime Minister is keeping the British people safe. Why would the British people want as their leader a man who for years supported the IRA?
I didn't support the IRA. I don't support the IRA. What I want everywhere is a peace process. What I want everywhere is decency and human rights. We went through all the horrors of Northern Ireland from all through the 70s and 80s, through the period of the Troubles, and eventually came from that a peace process, the Good Friday Agreement, and now relative peace and stability. And actually, you know, Northern Ireland has been a bit of a model around the world. It certainly helped in the peace process in Colombia. It's a model that's been used in trying to bring communities together in South Africa and other places. I think there's something we can all learn from Northern Ireland, where the two big divides, the nationalist tradition and the unionist tradition, came together on a basis of recognising a different tradition each had. That's quite powerful.
You say you didn't support the IRA, but you invited convicted IRA terrorists to tea in the Commons a few weeks after the Brighton bomb, which tried to destroy our elected government. You stood for a minute's silence to honour, your word, Mr. Corbyn, honour IRA terrorists killed by the British Army. Throughout the 80s and the 90s, you spoke at scores of hardline Republican gatherings which backed the IRA and the armed struggle.
I always wanted and always do want peace, always want a dialogue between people of vastly different backgrounds. And the minute silence you referred to was in 1987, and it was for all who had died in Northern Ireland.
That is one of the 8 IRA terrorists that had been killed. That was the purpose of the meeting.
I said all those that have died in Northern Ireland. I made that very, very clear.
But the purpose of the meeting was to honour these terrorists. I mean, as you went to all these hardline Republican meetings, they were backed by the IRA and its apologists. At any time publicly, did you urge them to give up the bomb and the bullet?
I always said that the bombing process would never work, that there wasn't a military solution to be found in Northern Ireland. I made that very clear. I made that very clear in the House of Commons and other places.
Did you urge the IRA to stop the bombs and the bullets?
I never met the IRA.
All its front people that you did meet all the time.
I obviously did meet people from Sinn Féin, as indeed I met people from other organisations.
In 1984, you've been quoted as saying every defeat of the British state is a victory for all of us. Now, you were talking about a Northern Ireland context. The defeat in Northern Ireland will be a defeat indeed. Why did you say that?
That was 34 years ago, and I said a number of things 34 years ago, and I now know better as a Member of Parliament of 30 years standing.
So you take that back?
I've moved on since 34 years ago. Have you?
Do you take it back?
I've moved on from 34 years.
But you also said you couldn't identify as British. Can you now tell the voters that you do identify as British?
I was elected as a British Member of Parliament in 1987. I was the first black woman ever elected, and I'm proud to say I'm a British Member of Parliament. I have no problem with that at all.
That's simply not true that he never met the IRA, is it?
He met with Sinn Féin.
He met also, I've got a list here of meetings that he had with the IRA. Why wouldn't he admit that to Andrew Neil?
Because I think that his understanding is he met with them in their capacity as activists in Sinn Féin. And, you know, it's not...
But he met with people who had been jailed for bombings. In 2000, he shared a platform with Brendan McKenna at an event commemorating Bloody Sunday. McKenna was jailed for his role in bombing the British Legion Hall in Portadown. In 2005, he shared a platform with Raymond McCartney. McCartney was a member of the IRA. I could go on. I've got a lot of these things here. That was a deliberate... Well, I was going to... I will say it was a deliberate lie, wasn't it? Because he has met the IRA.
I think we have to distinguish from being on a platform with people and conducting private meetings. I'm sure...
How can you possibly do that? I would not appear on a meeting, on a platform, with anybody convicted of terror offences. Would you?
I think... I haven't knowingly done it.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn clearly has. That's the point.
Jeremy Corbyn has said, it is embarrassing. It's embarrassing that you don't know your figures on a key policy.
I do know my figures, and as you will know, I did 7 interviews that morning, and that was the 7th, and I misspoke. But I do know my figures.
You didn't know them in that interview. Let's have a listen to it. In fact, it was with LBC and Nick Ferrari. Let's just take a listen, and viewers can make up their own minds.
So how much would 10,000 police officers cost?
Well, if we recruit the 10,000 police men and women over a 4-year period, we believe it'll be about £300,000.
£300,000?
Sorry,
10,000 police officers? What are you paying them?
No, I mean, sorry.
How much will they cost?
They will cost... It will cost about £80 million.
About £80 million?
Yeah.
Diane Abbott, that is hugely embarrassing. It's not just misspeaking, to quote you a bit earlier. You just don't know your figures and you're not on top of your brief.